He stood at the bar with his back to the room, thinking no one was watching. He had the whole evening mapped out, the guests, the caterers, the speech he'd rehearsed in the car on the way home. He'd been planning this for months, and honestly, his planning was impressive. Thorough, patient, detail-oriented. It's a shame he forgot one thing. The woman he married is a scientist. We notice things.
If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. My mother-in-law is convulsing on my living room rug, and I'm the only person in this room who knows exactly why. Pauline, 71 years old, green silk dress, complicated hair, Hermes scarf that probably cost more than my first car. She's on the floor now with foam at the corner of her mouth, and her eyes rolled so far back you can see mostly white. Her Judith Lieber clutch is 3 feet away, dumped on its side, lipstick and a folded tissue spilled out next to it. Jerome is crouched over her screaming. Not crying. Screaming. Call 911. Somebody call 911. Oh God, Mom. His voice cracks on the right syllables. I notice that. The crack comes right on cue, same as everything else tonight. Our daughter Ellie is standing by the window in the dress Pauline picked out for her. Cream-colored, stiff, the kind of thing you'd put a child in for a church portrait. Ellie hates it. She's 11 and would rather be home in her robotics club hoodie writing code, and right now she's so pale I can see the freckles on her nose from across the room. She's not moving. She's just staring at her grandmother on the floor. 60-something guests are doing what people do now. Half are calling for help. The other half are filming. And me. I'm standing here, holding a champagne glass I haven't sipped from all night, perfectly calm, watching my husband perform the role of shocked and grieving son over the body of a woman who swallowed the poison he meant for me. I'm gonna back up, because 30 minutes ago, this was a celebration. The party was Jerome's idea, all of it. My water filtration patent sold 3 weeks ago, $17 million. 12 years of research, 4 failed prototypes, 2 rejected grant applications, and 1 stretch of about 8 months where I was funding the whole thing out of our savings account, while Jerome told his friends I was doing a science project. And then it sold. A biotech licensing firm out of San Diego flew 2 people to our house in Raleigh, and by the time they left, I had a check coming that had more zeros than I'd ever seen on a document with my name on it. Jerome said we needed to celebrate properly. He wanted to handle everything himself so I could just enjoy the moment. His words, "Just enjoy your moment, Nora." He hired the caterers. He picked the specialty cocktails. He sent the invitations, which meant he chose the guest list. And he chose carefully. People from my past, former colleagues, a cousin I hadn't talked to in years, my old department chair. He pulled in everyone who'd ever doubted me or ignored me or quietly rooted against me. And he put them all in one room with good food and expensive champagne so they could act like they'd believed in me all along. I thought it was sweet. I thought he was being thoughtful. I understand now what he was actually doing. He was building a set. He was populating it with witnesses. He was crafting the backdrop for a story he planned to tell after tonight. The tragic story of a brilliant woman who worked herself half to death and whose heart just gave out at the moment of her greatest triumph, surrounded by people who loved her. What a loss. He'd been managing the image of our marriage for years. I earned. He networked. I worked. He charmed. Seemed like a reasonable division of labor. Turns out he wasn't managing our image. He was managing his exit. The Alexandria townhouse was packed wall to wall by 7 o'clock. I spent the first hour doing the rounds. My former research partner from grad school, Dr. Caldwell, who stopped returning my emails the year I left the university to go independent. He's standing by the fireplace with a glass of something amber, telling the story of how he always believed in my work. I smile and nod and do not say, "You sent me 1 email in 3 years, and it was to ask if I had a contact at the EPA. My cousin Candace is here. She's the one who told my mother, back when I was burning through our savings on prototypes, that I needed to face reality and go back to a real job. She's wearing a new bracelet, gold, chunky. She's had 2 glasses of champagne already, and she keeps squeezing my arm and saying, "We're just so proud of you, Nora. We always knew." She didn't know. She told my mother I was having a breakdown. But tonight, we're all rewriting history. The venture partner who passed on my first funding pitch is here, too. He gave me 11 minutes and a polite no and a business card I never called. Now he's in my dining room eating shrimp from a silver tray and talking about how he follows my work closely. I'm watching all of this and feeling, I don't know, not warm, not grateful, just tired in a specific way, the way you get tired when you've been the only one in the room who was right for a very long time, and now everyone wants credit for it. Ellie catches my eye from across the room, makes a face, the universal preteen expression for rescue me from this nightmare. I give her a little smile that says, "Almost done, baby." I had no idea how true that was. Jerome has been working the room all night. Navy blue suit, the one I bought him last month, Italian wool, perfectly tailored, $1,200, and I didn't argue about the price because he said he needed to look the part when he stood next to me at events. He's right about things like that. He always looks exactly right. I'm half listening to someone from the catering company's PR team explain something about sourcing when I notice Jerome moving. He's heading toward the bar we set up near the kitchen door. Something about his stride catches my attention. It's purposeful in a specific way. Shoulders back, hand moving toward his jacket pocket, a quick half glance over his right shoulder. I turn slightly. Keep him in my peripheral vision. Keep nodding at the PR person. Jerome reaches the bar. His back is mostly to the room. His right hand goes into his jacket pocket and comes out holding something small. A vial. Amber glass. Maybe 15 milliliters. The kind of thing you'd see in a lab supply catalog. My breath stops. He uncaps it with his thumb. No fumbling, smooth, like he's done it before, or rehearsed it enough times that it feels like muscle memory. He tips it over my grandmother's champagne flute, the crystal one with the small chip near the base, the one she gave me at my high school graduation and said, "Use this for your victories, sweetheart." And 3 drops fall into the champagne. I count them. 1, 2, 3. He swirls the liquid with his pinky finger, sets the glass back on the bar exactly where it was, caps the vial and slides it back into his pocket, turns around with a relaxed smile, like a man who just checked his watch. 8 seconds. The whole thing took 8 seconds. I had already started walking toward Pauline before I fully understood what I was going to do. She was holding court near the grand piano, which we own and no one plays, because Pauline always gravitates toward the most expensive object in any room. She'd already dabbed her eyes twice tonight with an embroidered handkerchief, even though nothing sad had happened yet. That's Pauline's signature. She pre-cries. Gets the emotion ready in advance so it looks authentic when she needs it. I walked straight up to her and I smiled the smile I have perfected over 14 years of marriage to her son. "Pauline," I said, "I wanted to make sure I gave you this myself. You've been such a big part of this whole journey." She looked at the champagne flute, then at me, then back at the flute. A little confused. We were not warm to each other, and she knew it. But she took it. Because it was pretty crystal and it was being offered, and Pauline has never in her life turned down something that felt like tribute. "Well," she said, adjusting her scarf, "that's very sweet of you, Nora." "Enjoy it," I said. And I meant that in a way she didn't understand yet. I picked up a different glass from the bar tray on my way back across the room. I didn't drink from it either. I just held it and smiled at people and waited. I want to be clear about something. I did not know for certain what was in that vial. I still don't, not in that moment. What I knew was that my husband had just put 3 drops of something into a glass he intended me to drink from, and I was not going to drink it. Everything after that was pure instinct, ugly instinct, but mine. I watched him work the room for about 20 minutes after that. He didn't know what I'd done. He thought the glass was waiting for me on the bar. He was relaxed, happy even, telling a story to my old department chair, laughing at the right moments, hand on the man's shoulder in that easy way he has. I watched his eyes. Jerome has beautiful eyes, gray-green, the kind that look different depending on the light. I used to love that about him. Now I was watching them for what they didn't do. They didn't fill with tears, not once. Not when Pauline started making a strange sound near the piano and grabbed the edge of the bench. Not when she went down. Not when he got to her and started screaming for help. The voice broke. The hands grabbed. The knees hit the floor. All of it was correct. Everything was correct. But the eyes just calculated, moving around the room, checking who was watching, registering the phones going up, adjusting. I've been married to this man for 14 years, and I know what his actual grief looks like. He cried at his father's funeral. He sat in the car afterward for 40 minutes and couldn't drive. That's what Jerome in real grief looks like. This was not that. This was a man adapting his plan in real time, because his plan had just gone sideways in a way he didn't understand yet. The paramedics came fast. Pauline was unconscious by the time they got to her, her breathing shallow and irregular. They worked on her right there on the living room floor while 60-something people pressed toward the walls trying to stay out of the way. Jerome rode to the hospital with her. I followed with Ellie in my own car because I told the detective on scene, there was one there within the hour, that I needed to get my daughter settled first. He said that was fine and he'd be in touch. Ellie was quiet in the car. She's a quiet kid under pressure. She held her own hands in her lap and looked out the window and finally said, "Is Grandma Pauline going to be okay?" "I think so," I said. And I believed that. The paramedics got to her fast. "What happened?" "We don't know yet," I said, which was true from a certain angle. At the hospital, the doctors stabilized Pauline within the first 2 hours. She'd ingested something. They described it as an alkaloid compound, toxic in small doses, derived from a plant. I didn't recognize the specific name they used right away. I looked it up later on my phone in the hospital parking lot. Aconitine, wolfsbane, used historically as a poison, difficult to detect in a standard tox panel, and it does not occur naturally in champagne. The detectives interviewed Jerome that night. He gave them everything: grief, confusion, trembling hands, the whole performance. They interviewed me too. I told them I'd been across the room when Pauline collapsed, that Jerome had been managing most of the party logistics, that I had no idea how something could have gotten into any of the drinks. All of that was technically accurate. I did not tell them what I saw at the bar. Not yet. Not that night. Because I've seen enough crime shows to know that what I had was my own testimony, which Jerome would deny and nothing else. And I'd watched enough of Jerome's performances that evening to know that he was very, very good at being believed. I needed more than my word against his. I needed to build something he couldn't talk his way out of. I drove home, put Ellie to bed, and sat in my office until 3 a.m. thinking. And I made a decision. I was going to do this right. I was going to be patient and careful and methodical. I was going to treat this the way I treat every problem that matters, like science. Oh. I want to tell you where my head went first, because I think it's important to be honest about the mistakes. Jerome has a business partner. Had one, I should say. Brandon. Brandon is the kind of man who uses the word synergy without irony, drives a leased BMW he can't quite afford, and always shakes your hand a half-second too long. I never trusted him. Jerome brought him in about 3 years ago as a co-investor in a commercial real estate venture, and from the beginning there was something off about the arrangement. Vague terms, late paperwork, meetings at odd hours. So in those first 2 weeks after the party, while I was still living in the house with Jerome and pretending everything was normal, I started digging into Brandon. I found things. Financial irregularities in the real estate LLC. Loans that weren't disclosed properly. Money moving in directions that didn't make sense. I spent hours on it. printing records, building a timeline, annotating documents. I became convinced that Brandon was the money motive, that Jerome had debts connected to Brandon, that Brandon was somehow involved in the plan, maybe even bankrolling it in exchange for a cut of the inheritance. I hired a private investigator for $3,000. He spent 2 weeks following Brandon. Brandon was having an affair with his dental hygienist. That was the big secret. His financial irregularities were real, but they were his own separate hustle, totally unconnected to Jerome or to me. The investigator told me, with genuine sympathy, that he found no evidence linking Brandon to anything involving my husband's personal life or finances. 2 weeks, $3,000, a whole theory gone. I sat with that for a day, let myself be frustrated, let myself feel stupid. Then I threw away the Brandon file and started over. When you go down a wrong road, the only useful thing to do is come back to where you turned and look again. So I came back. I stripped everything down to what I actually saw. 3 drops, my grandmother's glass, 8 seconds. That's what I had. That's where I had to start. Jerome's password for the family laptop is his mother's birthday, followed by the year she graduated from college. He's used variations of that combination for as long as I've known him. I know because I watched him type it once, years ago, and filed it in the back of my mind the way I file things. I'm not proud of why that detail stuck, but it did. I waited until he was at a dinner meeting one Thursday evening and I opened the laptop. His browsing history had been cleared. Of course it had. But the thing about people who clear their history is they usually don't think to check the cloud sync on their browser account. Jerome had auto sync enabled on his Chrome profile. I logged into the browser account from my own laptop. I knew that password too, same system, different year. And the history was all there. Every search, time-stamped. I sat there in the kitchen under the overhead light and read through 3 weeks of it. He'd searched the name of the compound multiple times, starting about 3 weeks before the party. Lethal dose in adults, detection window in blood, whether standard toxicology screens would catch it, spousal inheritance laws in North Carolina, whether a surviving spouse could access a patent trust before it cleared probate, and then, about 10 days before the party, a different set of searches, cognitive decline symptoms in adults, how to petition for conservatorship, what constitutes mental incapacity under state law, whether a diagnosed condition could void a recently signed asset agreement. I read that last cluster twice. He had 2 plans. That was the thing I hadn't understood yet. The poison was Plan A. But he'd also been building Plan B. If he couldn't kill me, he was going to have me declared mentally incompetent, take control of my finances through a conservatorship, and access the $17 million that way. 2 routes to the same destination. I made notes. I did not print anything from his account. I wrote everything down by hand in a spiral notebook and hid it in my car under the back seat mat. I started paying attention to small things around the house, whether drawers were exactly where I'd left them, whether my office door, which I always left open an inch, was fully closed when I got home, whether the stack of papers on my desk had shifted. I'm a scientist. I notice things. I started building baselines. I put a single hair, one of mine, long dark brown, across the top edge of my filing cabinet drawer, pressed it flat so both ends were anchored. The drawer contained copies of the patent assignment paperwork, the trust documents, the asset transfer records from the sale. All of it. 2 mornings later, the hair was gone. I didn't say anything. I replaced it. 3 days after that, gone again. Jerome had been in my files. Photographing documents, I assumed. He wouldn't have taken the originals, that would be too obvious, but he was building his own record, cross-referencing what was in the trust against what he needed for a conservatorship claim, or for a fraud argument, or for whatever legal mechanism he was planning to use in Plan B. I moved the real documents to my attorney's office that week. I replaced them in the filing cabinet with photocopies. Accurate, but missing a few key details that I altered slightly. Numbers off by 1 digit in account fields. A date changed by 2 weeks. Enough to be plausible on a quick phone photograph, confusing enough to cause problems if someone tried to use them officially. Then I got careless. Just once. I want to be honest about this part because it was my fault. I had a flash drive. On it, screenshots of the browser history, the search terms, and their timestamps. A document where I'd cross-referenced the searches against the date of the party and the date of the patent sale. And one voice memo. 47 seconds of Jerome on the phone in the backyard, which I'd recorded from the kitchen window without him knowing. I couldn't hear the other end of the conversation, but I heard his voice, clear and even, saying, "The cognitive evaluation angle is still the cleaner option if the first route doesn't go the way we planned. That 47-second recording was the best thing I had. I kept the drive in the glove compartment of my car. I thought it was safe there because Jerome never touched my car. He'd never once in 14 years cleaned out my glove compartment or refilled my windshield washer fluid or done any of the small maintenance things that some partners do as acts of care. He just didn't, so I didn't think about it. One Saturday morning, I came downstairs and Jerome was in the garage. He dragged out the shop vacuum and he was vacuuming the interior of my car, both front seats, the back, the floor mats. "What are you doing?" I said. He looked up with a completely normal expression. "Spring cleaning, your car was a mess." "You don't have to do that." "I know, I wanted to." He was done in about 20 minutes. He put everything back neatly. He did not mention the glove compartment specifically. He never does things like that. And I stood in the kitchen doorway for those 20 minutes trying to figure out whether I was being paranoid or whether my husband had just destroyed the best evidence I had. I checked the glove compartment after he went inside. The drive was gone. I sat in the driver's seat and looked at the windshield for a long time. Then I got out, went inside, made a pot of coffee, and started thinking about what I was going to do next. Because falling apart was not going to be productive. And I had already rebuilt from a dead end once. I could do it again. Here is something I would not have predicted in 100 years. Pauline saved me. Not intentionally at first, but she did. She called me from the rehabilitation facility about 3 weeks after the party. She was recovering. The aconitine had done real damage to her heart function, and she was going to be there for another few weeks. I hadn't visited. We weren't that kind of daughter-in-law and mother-in-law. Jerome visited. I sent flowers. When she called, I almost let it go to voicemail. I picked up. She didn't say hello the way normal people do. She said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting." So I listened. Jerome had visited her the previous week. He'd sat by her hospital bed and held her hand and been very attentive and loving, she said. And then he'd started asking her questions about whether she'd noticed anything different about me lately, whether I'd seemed scattered or forgetful, whether I'd said anything that seemed confused or paranoid, whether she'd be willing to speak to a doctor, or, he eventually clarified, a court-appointed evaluator, about her concerns regarding my mental state. I said to him, Pauline told me, her voice dry as I had ever heard it, that I wasn't aware I had concerns regarding your mental state. He said he thought I might, if I thought about it hard enough. There was a pause. "I thought about it," she said. "I thought about it while I was lying in that hospital bed for 2 weeks, with my heart doing things it was never supposed to do. And what I think, Nora, is that I am not going to lie for my son." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I said, "What do you think happened at the party, Pauline?" Another pause. "I think," she said carefully, "that I drank something I wasn't supposed to drink, and I think the glass wasn't meant for me." A beat. "I'm not stupid, Nora. I'm difficult. Those are different things." "They are," I said. "I'm not going to lie for him," she said again. "I want to be very clear about that. I don't know everything, but what I know, I'll say." I thanked her. She said, "Don't thank me, just don't let him win." Then she hung up. I sat in my car in the driveway and let myself feel it for about 60 seconds, because I had not expected that, not from Pauline, not in 100 years. Then I called my attorney. Here's what I know about Jerome. He is greedy and he is impatient. He has always had both qualities. He gets a good idea and he can't leave it alone. He pulls at it. He accelerates. When the real estate deal was falling through a few years ago, he pushed the timeline up and made 3 mistakes in 2 weeks. He doesn't know how to wait, so I built something for him to find. My attorney connected me with a forensic IT consultant, a woman named Deb, who charged $350 an hour and was worth every cent. I told her what I needed. She built a decoy financial portal in about 4 days. Same color scheme as my actual bank's interface. Same logo placement, same layout. Fake. Completely fake. But convincing enough that if you weren't looking closely, you'd believe it. I printed a single page of fake documents. A secondary patent licensing arrangement, fictional, showing a payout of $200,000 into an account with routing information that would trace directly back to a flagged capture system Deb had set up. I left the login credentials written on a yellow sticky note, folded once, tucked into the folder with the fake documents. Then I put the folder in my filing cabinet, the one he'd already been in twice. I moved all my real documents to my attorney's office permanently. I stopped caring about the filing cabinet except as bait, and then I waited, because Jerome can't wait. That was the whole bet. 3 days. That's all it took. Deb flagged me on a Thursday afternoon. There had been a login attempt to the fake portal from our home IP address at 2:17 in the afternoon, which was while I was at Ellie's school for a parent-teacher conference, and Jerome was supposedly working from home. The login credentials matched the ones on the sticky note exactly. 40 minutes later, an attempted wire transfer. $187,000. Jerome had apparently done some math and decided to be slightly conservative with the round number. I found that detail almost funny later. The routing information he used traced back to an account in Jerome's name, a secondary personal account I hadn't known about, which Deb's capture system documented fully before rejecting the transfer. Failed transaction, but every step of it was logged. I got the full report from Deb that evening, 12 pages, timestamps, IP confirmation, the attempted routing, the account number, all of it clean and documented and timestamped by a third-party system that hadn't touched anything to do with me directly. I read the report twice. Then I called my attorney. Then I called a different number, one I'd held on to for about a week. His name was Detective Vasquez, Financial Crimes Unit. He wasn't the detective who'd interviewed me at the party. That was someone from the General Investigations side who'd been working the Pauline hospitalization as a potential poisoning case. Vasquez was different. My attorney suggested him specifically. I sat across from him in a conference room at my attorney's office on a Friday morning, and I laid everything out. Pauline's account of the conservatorship conversation, written and signed, notarized. She'd agreed to that the week before without me even asking. She called my attorney's office herself and asked what she needed to do. The forensic IT report from Deb, the honeypot portal, the login attempt, the wire transfer, the captured account information, Jerome's browser history reconstructed. I documented everything from memory into a detailed written account the night I found it. And then Deb was able to pull the actual sync records from the cloud account with Jerome's login credentials because the account was still active, and Jerome had never changed the password. She pulled the full history directly, and it matched my notes exactly. The toxicology report from Pauline's hospitalization, which by that point had been officially confirmed as aconitine poisoning. Not accidental, not naturally occurring. And my own eyewitness account, detailed, written, signed. What I saw at the bar, the vial, the 3 drops, the pinky swirl, all of it. Vasquez listened without interrupting. He took notes in a narrow spiral notebook. When I was done, he was quiet for a moment. You documented all of this while living in the house with him? He said. Yes. And you didn't say anything to him? No. Why not? I looked at him. Because my word against his wasn't going to be enough. And I wasn't going to give him a head start. He nodded. He said he'd need to loop in the detective handling the poisoning case and that the financial crimes component would involve federal jurisdiction because of the wire transfer attempt. He said this was going to take a few weeks to formalize. I said I understood. I said I'd wait. He said, and I appreciated this, "You've done most of the work already." Jerome was arrested on a Tuesday, 11:40 in the morning, at a lunch meeting at a restaurant downtown, not at home. I had asked specifically that it not happen at home because Ellie gets off the school bus at 3:15, and I didn't want there to be any chance she'd come home to something difficult. They accommodated that. I was at the kitchen table when it happened. I had made a cup of tea, chamomile, which I don't even particularly like, but it felt like the right thing to drink while waiting. I had my phone face up on the table. I sat there and looked out the window at the backyard, where the dogwood in the corner was starting to bud because it was that time of year, and I waited. My attorney called at 11:53. "It's done," she said. "Okay," I said. "Thank you." I hung up and sat there for a while. I don't know how long exactly. The tea got cold. I thought about the version of Jerome I married, the one who brought me soup when I was sick and mispronounced words in French when we went to Paris and cried at his father's funeral for 40 minutes in the car. That person was real too, or I thought he was. 14 years is a long time to be wrong about someone, but you can spend a lot of time trying to figure out exactly when it turned, and you will not get that time back. So I don't do that for long. I picked up the phone and called Ellie's school to let them know I'd be picking her up today instead of the bus. Jerome's attorney was good. I'll give him that. The legal strategy they pursued was exactly what I'd expected from the browser history, the concerned husband angle. Jerome had noticed Nora becoming erratic. Nora was showing signs of cognitive instability. Jerome's actions were those of a desperate man trying to protect his family's financial future because his wife's mental health was deteriorating and she refused to seek help. They filed a motion to delay proceedings on the grounds that I should undergo a psychiatric evaluation. My attorney filed a response. I'd already voluntarily completed a full cognitive evaluation, 4 hours, 3 different assessments, with a neuropsychologist named Dr. Feldman, who reported no cognitive impairment, no signs of decline, no instability of any kind. I'd scheduled that appointment 2 months before Jerome was arrested. I'd done it because I saw this argument coming from the browser history. Preparing for it felt better than being surprised by it. Doctor. Feldman's report was entered as evidence. The motion was denied. The cousin Candace called twice in the week after the arrest. I let both go to voicemail. I didn't return either call. She didn't call again after that. That's a different kind of quiet conclusion, and I was fine with it. Jerome's brother, I won't go into the whole family situation, but there is a brother, sent me a long email saying that the family was devastated and that he hoped I understood Jerome wasn't in his right mind and asking whether I'd reconsider pressing charges. I read it once. I did not respond. Ellie knew what was happening. She's 11, not 3. I sat with her and told her the truth in a version that was age-appropriate. Dad had done something very wrong, something that hurt people, and the law was handling it the way the law is supposed to handle those things. She asked if it was her fault. I told her no, clearly and immediately. Not one single part of any of this was hers. She asked if I was okay. I said yes, and I meant it. She went quiet for about a day. Then she asked if she could rearrange her bedroom and get rid of the desk her father had picked out, which she'd never liked. I said absolutely. We moved it to the garage that weekend. Yep. 6 weeks. Jerome never took the stand. His attorney advised against it, which was the right call because the evidence was substantial and Jerome under cross-examination would have been a disaster. The prosecutor laid it out in layers. The toxicology, aconitine, not a random substance, not something that ends up in a champagne flute by accident. My testimony, 2 full days of it, walking the jury through every detail from the moment I saw Jerome at the bar to the moment I called my attorney. Deb's technical report, which she presented herself on the stand in plain language that was almost admirably clear. The browser history, projected on a screen for the jury. 3 weeks of searches, starting with the compound name and ending with conservatorship law. The honeypot evidence, the login, the attempted transfer, the captured account. And then Pauline. She came in on a walker, which she hadn't needed before. The aconitine had done lasting damage to her heart, and she was going to be dealing with that for the rest of her life. She sat in the witness box looking smaller than I had ever seen her, without the silk dress and the embroidered handkerchief and the armor of expensive things. She looked like a woman in her 70s who had been through something serious and was doing what she needed to do about it. She told the jury about Jerome's visit to the rehab facility, what he'd asked her to say, what she'd refused. The prosecutor asked, "Mrs. Pauline, did you know your son planned to poison Nora?" She said, "No. Not until I woke up in that hospital and started thinking about what must have happened. And when he asked you to participate in the plan to have Nora declared incompetent, did you agree?" She was quiet for a moment. "He asked me to say certain things. I told him I couldn't say things I didn't believe." Another pause. "I also told him that whatever he was doing, he needed to stop. He did not stop." Jerome's attorney tried to walk back some of her testimony during cross. Pauline is not easy to rattle. She answered what was asked and added nothing. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When the verdict came in, I was sitting in the 3rd row between my attorney and my cousin Candace, who had appeared at the courthouse on the first day of trial and whom I'd allowed to sit near me because she was trying, and I didn't have the energy to make it harder for her. Guilty. Attempted murder. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Financial elder abuse against a financial institution. All counts. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I breathed, just breathed, all the way down, the kind of breath you take when you've been holding yourself very still for a very long time, and you finally don't have to anymore. Ellie squeezed my hand from my other side. I hadn't told her to be there. She'd asked to come, and I'd said yes, because she is her own person, and this was her life too. Jerome was sentenced 2 weeks later, 22 years. Pauline received 5 years probation and paid restitution. The judge acknowledged that she was also, in a very real sense, a victim. She'd nearly died, and she'd been asked to participate in something ugly by someone she trusted, and she'd refused. That counted for something. I thought it should. Jerome's former office is a construction zone right now. It was the room he used for his calls and his meetings and whatever else he was doing in there. And for the last 3 months it has been, in order, a storage room for things I couldn't look at yet, an empty room I walked past without opening the door, and now a project. Ellie and I are turning it into a proper lab. We spent about 4 hours at the hardware store picking out paint. She wanted something bold for the main walls, and she was right. We went with a deep teal that looks almost emerald in the afternoon light. 1 full wall is going to be chalkboard paint, floor to ceiling, so we can work through equations together. She has strong opinions about the shelving, and I am letting her have them because they're good opinions, and she gets that from me. The contractors start on Monday. The $17 million is structured in a trust arrangement that my attorney spent considerable time getting exactly right. It funds Ellie's future, education, whatever she builds after that. It funds a set of water filtration projects in 3 communities that have been waiting too long for clean water. And yes, it lets me live comfortably while I do work that matters. That's a reasonable arrangement, and I'm not apologetic about it. Pauline calls occasionally. Not warmly exactly. We're not warm, but she calls. She told me last month that she's been thinking about what she should have paid more attention to over the years. I didn't tell her what to think about that, but I didn't dismiss it either. The party guests have mostly gone quiet. My former department chair sent a very carefully worded email. The venture partner did not contact me at all. Cousin Candace sends me articles sometimes, links to things she thinks I'd find interesting. I click on some of them. That's probably as far as we're going to get, and I think that's fine. Ellie is designing a water quality sensor for her robotics club project. It's good work, better than good. It's genuinely clever. She explained the mechanism to me last Tuesday while we were eating pizza on the kitchen floor because the table had lab supply catalogs all over it. And I sat there listening to my 11-year-old explain her sensor calibration logic, and I thought, she got that from me too. Jerome is in federal prison in Butner, which is about 2 hours from Raleigh. I don't think about him a lot. When I do, it's not with anger anymore. Anger takes energy, and I have better uses for mine. Mostly, what I feel is a kind of settled. Like a question that used to be open has been answered, and now I can move on to the next one. The night the verdict came in, I opened a bottle of wine I'd bought specifically for that occasion, checked the seal myself, poured a glass, and walked to the kitchen window. It was a quiet street, early spring. The dogwood in the back was fully bloomed by then. I raised the glass, not to Jerome, not to any of it specifically, to survival, to Ellie sleeping upstairs, to the lab we were going to build in the room he used to hide in, to scientists, I thought. We notice things. I took a sip. The wine was a good one. I don't remember the exact label now. What I remember is that it tasted like the specific relief of having been right when it really mattered and having done the work to prove it and still being here to drink it. Next morning, Ellie made breakfast. Scrambled eggs with approximately half the shell still in them, toast that was closer to charcoal, orange juice that she'd poured into a coffee mug because all the glasses were in the dishwasher. She put it in front of me with the serious expression of someone presenting important work. "Breakfast," she announced. "I see that," I said. "It's good," she said firmly. I ate every bite, and I meant it. That is what victory looks like. Not the verdict or the handcuffs or the sentencing, not the moment you stop being afraid. It's the scrambled eggs with shell in them and the girl who made them and the morning light in a house that is yours now, just yours, and a day ahead with nowhere to be afraid of. We're building something, both of us. And that is not revenge. That is the rest of our lives. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here. You